Working our way through the month of December, headed toward Christmas, and then right into Big 12 conference play as we catch up with Coach Boynton once again, and most recently a good win over a team, Sam Houston State, that had won at Utah, that had won at Oklahoma. They were number 7 in the NCAA net rankings coming into the game. So what was your biggest takeaway? What was the biggest growth maybe that your team made in the Sam Houston win that maybe will carry over long term?
Well, offensively, we moved the ball so much better. And because of that, we got so much more efficient shots. We actually made 9 threes, 4 of them from Bryce Thompson, who we need to get going from 3 a little bit more here as we move forward and get closer to Big 12 play. And then obviously we got some production from our inside guys, not in the terms of scoring a ton, but because they were double teaming some kick-out threes and offensive rebounds. Still turned the ball over a little bit too much, but some of that was due to the different style of defense that they play versus what we usually see. They were very aggressive, but I like the growth that we made offensively.
What's a good three-point shot look like for Bryce Thompson? Because it seems like in the Sam Houston game, we saw what that looked like. What's that look like? What do you want to see from him?
Well, a lot of times it's going to be a shot that he doesn't have to create for himself. It's going to be a shot that's either in transition as Avery Anderson or John Michael Wright penetrates and gets inside the lane and kicks it out to him, or in our half-court situations where either that happens or we throw the ball inside to Musa Cisse or Caleb Boone or Tyreek Smith, and the defense makes a decision that they're going to go send a second defender there. And then a lot of times he's going to be spotted up shooting shots that he shoots a lot in practice.
What's the significance of the continued production of Tyreek Smith? I mean, he is shooting in the neighborhood of 80% over the last handful of games. He had a 2-game stretch where he didn't miss a shot. Of course, he made a 3 at the end of the game against Sam Houston. But how significant is production from him, and what's that production look like? What's realistic consistently?
Well, I think he can be an 8 to 10 point scorer per night because, first of all, he takes the shots that he's going to make most of the time, which are layups or dunks, offensive rebounding, or free throws. And so because he's not taking a ton of shots, and he's certainly not taking any bad shots, his efficiency is through the roof. So we got to continue to, encourage him to, a double-digit scorer with minimal attempts is a guy who gets a lot of attention. And so coming off the bench for us, bringing that spark, as well as his defensive presence with Caleb and Musa, gives us, just a tremendous dynamic from inside scoring standpoint.
From an outside scoring standpoint, it's interesting. Teams usually have, and we've talked about this in some previous interviews, I call them elevator guys. They may not be the leading scorer, but if you look at what happens when a team wins, they're productive. When the team loses, they're not. For your team, John Michael Wright's probably at the top of that list. So what needs to occur for him to be on the right side of the elevator more often? Because his numbers really seem to dictate success and perhaps a lack of success for your team so far.
Yeah, I mean, his splits are the most dramatic on our team. When I say splits, I'm talking about his production and wins versus his production in the games that we haven't won. The biggest difference are his efficiency numbers and his turnovers. And obviously he played pretty well again the other night, was a double-digit scorer for us. Again, we have 4 double-digit scores. So we got to just implore him to find the balance between being more of a facilitator, playing with Avery and Bryce, guys who can also be scorers for us, versus still finding an aggression that he's shown to be able to have, considering he was an 18-point-a-game scorer for 3 years at High Point.
The funny thing, you mentioned this the other night, his background and his introduction to Oklahoma State, you were telling me it comes from a video game. He wanted to play here, and now he's here, but it all triggers back, you were saying, to a video game. Is that right?
Yeah, his interest in Oklahoma State far preceded our interest in him. And, just a young kid growing up in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Just was playing a football game when he was a young kid and picked Oklahoma State and fell in love with whatever he saw in the video game. I don't know if it was Barry Sanders or Thurman Thomas or Des Bryant, but he fell in love with Oklahoma State and always had a desire to play here. So when he became available on the market and we called this past spring, he was really, really excited about it and couldn't wait to come visit, and I'm certainly glad that he chose to come here.
So that wasn't a hard sell?
It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be for a kid coming from outside the region. A lot of times you think maybe he wants to play in the ACC or SEC,
right.
But wanting to not only get out of his region, but specifically have a desire to come to Stillwater and play at Oklahoma State and put on the Cowboy uniform was pretty significant for him.
When I think about the teams you've played up to this point, you've covered about all the bases. I mean, in terms of styles. I mean, you've seen teams that play zone. You've seen teams that are 5 out. You've seen teams that want to play fast, play slow. Has this been maybe about the most diverse non-conference schedule you've played? Because it just seems like you've seen just about everything.
Yeah, it certainly has been the most balanced in terms of the schedule we've played. Across the board, all the teams, whether what league they were in, have brought something that has challenged us in some way or another. And Sam Houston the other night was the most aggressive defensive team we've played thus far. We've played some teams, like you said, that have been a little bit passive, a little bit more passive. Some teams that have zoned us, like Oakland. We've played some teams with size, like UConn. We played some teams that are smaller, like Prairie View A&M. And obviously, we're about to head on the road and play a team that's probably the best offensive team that we've seen thus far in Virginia Tech. So the balance in the schedule gives you a great opportunity to learn who you are before you get into conference play.
Virginia Tech against your mentor, certainly one of them.
Yeah, just a tremendous challenge. Just watched them last night against Dayton. They boat raced them out of the gym in Castle Coliseum, and they'll present challenges because they can space the floor with 5 guys who can all shoot the basketball. Really, not necessarily play fast, but really efficient on the offensive end. So we're going to have to bring our best defensively to take away some of the things they do, but we're also going to have to be efficient on our offensive end as well.
You work for their head coach, Mike Young, at Wofford. Tell us about the influence he had on you, what that experience was like.
Yeah, he may have been my biggest influence as far as coaching philosophy and understanding how to run a program. Coach Young, when I worked for him, I was 25 years old and named me his associate head coach.
Wow.
But not just gave me the title, he gave me all the responsibilities that come with that. And I had to learn pretty quickly what it meant to, challenge guys, to set a schedule, to make a practice plan. And I'm thankful for that experience. I look forward to competing against him now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, is it a bit odd? I mean, you've obviously encountered, different people that are a part of your journey as a coach and competed against him as a head coach, but Mike Young obviously is in very high regard and had a huge influence on you career-wise. Are there any odd emotions that go with competing against one of your mentors, or no?
There is. The closest I've come to this is Frank Martin. I think my second year here. Mm-hmm. We played South Carolina in the SEC Big 12 Challenge, and that was unique as well because I worked for Frank for a year also. And, the challenge is you obviously don't want to see your friends lose. But certainly as a competitor, somebody has to lose, and you don't want to lose yourself. So we'll have our team prepared, but hopefully after the game, we'll get a chance to figure out how we can help each other's teams be better moving forward.
So it's the Cowboys in the Barclays Center on Sunday against Virginia Tech, and then basically a week off between games before the Cowboys go to Wichita for another challenging game against Wichita State. That's Coach Boynton. I'm Dave Hunziker, and we'll see you next week.